This season, turn it up to 10. Sorta like a bad habit, we gon' do it again. Ready or not, we're gonna tie up some ends. Go tell a 36, try to grab all the friends. We're back like we never left. On track like a treble clef. Skip a beat on the 7th rest. Bring feast, we don't pass them over. We got the first fruits, no weighted shoulders. Can't live on that bread alone. Every word of God's mouth will fuel me on. That's scripture, that's Christ alone. That's grace alone, that's faith alone. All glory to God, cause that's his alone. Since the lamb's been slain, we can each belong. The Lord is my strength, my peace, and my song. Get I'll lay it all down at the feet of his throne. This yoke is easy, this burden's light. Even with a loud mouth trying to eat at the mic. Even if we down south, the humidity spike. Veils torn in tubes, so we gon' be alright. It's all grace till the half goes off. Heretics better run till the top blows off. Got them all stood still like a jaw full of Botox. Time to break them down like a jaw on a blow pop. Don't stop, they're in need of it though. Through grace by faith, they could easily grow. New wave, new age, new way to see bro. Now one truth, life, one way to his throne. It up like the Keicher. Google it, we ain't dropping any rhetoric. Well, maybe so, but that's for you to find out. Don't get tossed to and fro by any loud mouth. What you think it's Indiana Jones, son? It's the year of the feast, we gon' grow some. Time to put some meat in the bones. Gotta put the milk down, son, it's time to leave home. I'm just saying there's a time in the season you gotta be a Berean. If you just hear and believe it, you could be walking with demons. It could be rendering Caesar. All the things that go to God, that's a little like treason. Wait, welcome back, my friends. Did you ever really think we could pass the 10? Our stock's up, we about to trend. Cause the whole 36 wanna rap again. Wait, sounds too good to be true. Like Rabbinic Candyland, ain't no ladders, just shoot. We hold true if it's loaded in the cannon. Best believe it's understanding. If it's not, it ain't proof. Like sacred name of the 2-house frame. It start to tickle, then you feel it in the planks. You better not, you be better off. Not trying to hassle Hoff, you can take it to the bank. This night ready, he's about to go off. Put the ring on your finger from the Cracker Jack box. It's hide and seek, let's see if you can find out all the little messages you hit before the timeout. Ever seen a scholar with a blue belt? I have, he's about to make your food melt. The loud one and he strikes again, but don't let him close range, he gon' bite your friends. So relax, got it still in control. He knows every care, every bit that you hold. He knows every hair, every need for your soul. Nothing new around here, this story's been told. I bet you feel weak and your life is in tatters. With bruised feet, your body is battered. You can't reach, trying to climb up that ladder. Sit back and hold fast till Messiah matters.
These guys are laughing.
It is Wednesday, July 10th, 2024. This is Messiah Matters number 479. Happy anniversary to my wonderful wife. My name is Caleb Haig.
Hey, happy anniversary to your wife as well. I'm Rob Vanoff.
You know, I thought with the extra 10 minutes that we had, all the technical issues, you were writing just the best intro, but no.
No, I leave those to you.
Fair. What's going on, my guy? How you doing?
Going well.
Doing well? All right. Anything new in life?
Well, it's, 100 degrees plus all week here, so there's that.
Yep, there is that. Yeah, we're in the high 90s, so that's been fun as well. All right. We got Hang on just a sec. Let's see what's going on in the chat room. Rob, I will finish your parashah after this stream. Happy anniversary. Thank you so much. Okay, well, all right. We took a little bit longer to get going here. I've had some audio issues this morning because I did the thing that I'm supposed to do, which is update my audio right before a show, or update any app right before a show. Anytime I do that, things tend to break. So lesson learned, hopefully, for the last time. Anyway, we're here, and that's all that matters. You know, we have some cool stuff going on. First of all, for those who have a Learning Center membership, we have a teaching from Rob that he did online for a congregation. That's going to be up shortly. And then in a couple weeks, I did a interview with someone that will probably be up in the next couple weeks as well in the TR Learning Center. And then we have a couple other things that we have in the works. We're trying to get done and trying to get going. So it's going to be really good. Yes. Thank you, everyone, for the happy anniversaries to me and my beautiful wife. 13 years. If you were at my wedding, I know it feels like it was yesterday. Best wedding ever. Anyway. All right. Should we jump in? You want to say anything before we get rolling?
Let's do it. Let's jump in.
Okay, well, before we jump in, I do have a couple of things to say. Number one, if you want to be a part of this conversation, chegg at TorahResource.com, CHEGG at TorahResource.com. You can also call our comment line, 253-465-3205. It's 253-465-3205. If you won't talk to us, just talk to an answering machine. Tell us how much you love us, hate us, whatever you want to say. Also, you can find past shows, MessiahMatters.com. That's in audio format or in video format. I know I'm talking fast. It's okay. You can also find all sorts of free resources. You can sign up for a TR Learning Center free account. You can listen to interviews, all sorts of stuff. TorahResource.com. You'll find all the appropriate links, and you'll find a link in the main banner. You'll find a link to the Young Scholars essay competition, which is now in full effect. We have kids who have already wrote in and said that they're getting going. They're moving on it. So we're excited for that. Last but definitely not least, do not forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're already subscribed, give this video a like. I know it sounds weird, but it really does help us. Okay, I'm trying to mess with my audio here because I do realize that I am very loud, and I realize that Rob was blasting as well when he first was on. So I think I'm dialing it in on the fly.
It's because I was yelling.
Well, that's true. No, it's not. Actually, it's because for the interview that I did the other day, I turned the audio up because his audio was really low. So when you came in, you were like, Anyway, all right. With all of that said, by the way, last thing I want to say, we should have a producer credit, and I said it would be up by this Wednesday, but we've been really busy doing other things. I'm sorry about that, but I think it's going to be worth it for you in the long run. We will have our new producer credit art up. You can people who want to subscribe to executive producers to be on an automatic, that's back up and running now. You have to go sign up for that. I'll have our new producers listed next week, and we will have new producer art, and I will be sending all that out hopefully within the next week. Okay. Let's go to my show notes and see what we have for us today. Brad writes in. He says, I am at a loss when it comes to Genesis 9:3, which suggests Noah was permitted to eat pork after the flood, as pigs are living things that move. Noah knew the difference between clean and unclean critters. Scripture tells us that Abraham knew the Torah long before Sinai. I firmly reject the popular Noahite laws for Gentiles, good for you, narrative, and believe there is one Torah for all humanity. Any thoughts? Yeah, I think we've talked about this numerous times, and that's okay. Johnny, who did you interview? Solberg? No, I did not interview Solberg. I interviewed Dr. Benjamin, I'm going to butcher his last name, Zumsky, Dr. Benjamin Zumsky. And it was great. It was really good. And I got to talk to him after the interview a little bit, and just really, it's a good connection, and you'll see why when the interview comes out. So you'll see why I'm so excited about it. I think it's a relationship that's just starting to blossom, but I think it's going to be a really, really good connection. Not only for me personally, but also for our staff and for people who like TorahResource. I think that it's going to be good all around. Anyway, and I'm praying about that. So anyway, okay. Back to Genesis 9:3. So I don't have my Bible open, but let's go to Genesis 9:3. Genesis 9:3. Rob, do you want to take this first or you want me to? Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. Every living thing that moves shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything.
Okay. We need to remember, that, and my view is that this is the transition here is from vegetarian diet to now eating meat, right? That's the main thing. And the context, in my view, is that we notice that Noah already knew the difference between clean and unclean, right? I mean, he's already discerning clean things, and that Noah already cared about what God cared about. In other words, Noah's worship was acceptable because, and we know that when he offers burnt offerings, that he's slaughtering animals. He's flaying the cart, he's flaying the parts. He's arranging them on an altar, and he's smelling the cooked meat, but he's not eating it, right? And that worship was acceptable to him, and we know that he lived by faith. My view is that the next eating meat was God saying, now you can actually eat some of this meat that you have been sacrificing already as a vegetarian. So that's my view. I don't read Genesis 9:3 as Noah, go ahead and
eat pork. Yeah. Yeah.
Or crab or anything like that. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I mean, we don't. Now, this is the verse that the Christian tradition does not have, is where, and they all, ate a bunch of pork or ate a bunch of lobster. We don't have it in the Old Testament. We don't have it in the New Testament.
Right. So I'll give you my 2 cents on this. We know for a fact that this cannot mean all things. Everything. And the reason why is, first of all, he couples it like, just as I gave you all plants. If you eat every plant on the earth, you are going to die. What I mean by that is that there are plants that are poisonous. If you eat it, you're especially somebody in that time. We might have different methods where you're able to take stuff out now, but ultimately, if you eat certain plants, you're going to die. So God's not saying go eat any plant you want. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that you can eat vegetation. The other thing is that we know that he can't be saying this about meat. And the reason why is because certain frogs, you eat a certain frog, you're going to die. You eat certain slugs, you're going to die. There's things in the world that if you eat, you're going to die. God certainly doesn't mean that you can, if a human keels over next to you, you can eat the human, right? That's ridiculous. This is not what's happening in this verse.
Right. This is a good point. Really good point. It's like the word all or kol in Hebrew is constrained. The question is, are you constraining it? Is where you draw the line. And I think the plausible scenario is just exactly like you're saying, Caleb. We constrain it by looking at the text. And I think you've got a great point about vegetation. All things cannot mean, yeah. Well, here's the other thing. I've given you all. Does that mean rocks? Is it constrained? Now, it does mention living things, of course, and rocks are not living things. But the word all is constrained by context.
Right. And Jesse in the chat room says, I think people forget Moses wrote this. If he wrote it, he expects the reader to understand the ambiguity of, quote, unquote, all things.
And the readers are tracking with the concept of clean animals. Before, so Noah knows what clean animals are before the flood.
Right.
Right. And so that's, That's there.
Yeah. I
So
agree
the
with you
idea that
completely.
Noah would, I've been wanting to eat these unclean animals. Now I get to that. That is imposing what I view as a wrong spirit on the scriptures.
Agreed. Okay, I hope that answers it for Brad. We're going to move on. Rushki Bear, who's in the chat room right now, asks this question. These are as Andrew Schumacher would say, these are just the softballs that we're lobbing out. These are just the easy, the surface level questions. Sorry about that to anyone who really wants a deep dive today. We do have a bunch of people actually. A bunch of people actually wrote in and said, hey, do a deep dive on, and then, whatever. So we have probably 5 different topics that people want deep dives on. And some of them, one person wrote in and said, hey, do a deep dive on circumcision. I honestly think that we've been doing a deep dive on circumcision over the past 100 shows. You can't, I don't think you'd be able to actually compact circumcision into one deep dive show. It's a multiple show kind of a thing. You'd have to, and the reason why is because rabbit trail, by the way. But I think that when it comes to circumcision, the idea of circumcision and what's going on in the first century with the term circumcision, I think it is a crux position for the Torah movement. What I mean by that is, if you start to view circumcision as a conversion process, and this is what they're referring to in many cases, not all, but in many cases, all of a sudden, the book of Galatians takes on an entirely different meaning. The book of Romans has different meanings throughout certain texts, right? I mean, there's all these different passages that people use often, and you're looking at them going, wait, this isn't what we thought it meant. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means, right? And so, I mean, the point is that we've talked about circumcision so much because I think that it's one of those foundational aha moments that people have when they're looking at the text and they're saying, "Oh, wait, Paul's not saying you shouldn't do X, Y, Z. You shouldn't perform the physical command of circumcision." Anyway, so rabbit trail there. Sorry about that. We'll come back to circumcision many, many, many times. But we do have lots of deep dive topics. This is not one of them, though. Rushki Bear says, so what is going on with the Vav? Why are there translations of the Hebrew letter Vav that go from Vav to Wow, that is W-A-W instead of V-A-V? So I've taken Hebrew from 3 teachers actually so far. 2 of them, my father and then Dr. Osland, they use what is considered to be modern pronunciation. I'm gonna go with this, and then I will shift this over to you. My other Hebrew teacher, Dr. Garrett held to what he would consider to be classical Hebrew pronunciation. That's what he called it. And when he was describing this in my very first Hebrew class, he said, I hold to classical pronunciation. And this is the way he described it. Rob might disagree with this. However, he said this is like Old English. So like Tyndale English or Shakespearean English, perhaps, compared to English today. It is believed by many scholars that the Vav used to be pronounced with a W sound, so it would be wow instead of Vav, whereas it shifted in modern pronunciation now says Vav with a V instead of a W. This you're going to find it both ways. It's written both ways. So just like, if you're reading some Old English, you're going to see things spelled differently. Maybe pronunciation is going to be a little bit different. It's the same in the Hebrew, according to this view. Now, my second Hebrew teacher at Southern, Dr. Osland, he brings up a good point. Somebody asked him in one of our Hebrew classes, why is it that you use modern pronunciation, whereas others like Dr. Garrett use a traditionalist or a more ancient pronunciation? And Dr. Osland, I think his answer was superb. He said, I think that it's hard to learn Hebrew, and any tools that you can, any help that you can get is going to be helpful. So if you can look at the modern Jewish reading of the scriptures in Hebrew, and you can listen to it, they're going to pronounce it in modern Hebrew pronunciation. They're not going to use the more classical pronunciation. And so you should get used to that. And that's what, those are the tools that you're going to want to use. And I think that he's right. And I grew up with my father using a more traditional pronunciation. Rob uses a more, not traditional, I'm sorry, a more modern pronunciation with a vav. That's my understanding of it, and that's how I see it. Rob?
Yeah, I don't use the category of like classical Hebrew. To me is also an invention. There's no classical Hebrew. And any language that sticks around for a while and is spread over geography has different pronunciations. We can see that, there's dialectical variants. There's, and how letters are sounded or pronounced, it varies also. We have one example. Is it in the Book of Judges? Where is the shibboleth? I think that's in Judges, where you've got Israelite tribes. Basically, I'm going to totally paraphrase this, but basically, you have one group of Israelites questioning another group of Israelites, and they say this word, shibboleth, and they say sibboleth. They can't say the word. Right. They can't match the pronunciation. So
it's like the Seinfeld episode. It's like the Seinfeld episode
what's that one?
Where George tries to pretend like he's in the secret club, but he doesn't know the secret handshake. Anyway, keep going.
I don't know that one. That's funny.
Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. So we have variation. We have variation in how letters were pronounced. Also we have letters that have more than one sound. Like you have the shin, the letter shin. If you've done Hebrew, they have to put a dot on one side or the other, so you know which way to pronounce it. We have, and the use of vav is quite varied. It can have a holum and be an O sound. It can have an U sound. It can have a dagesh and be doubled. So there's all manner of variations in the preserved, Masoretic tradition. Another resource is we look at mostly in names. Like you can look at Hebrew names, and then you look at how they were transliterated into Greek and what Greek letters were used. So I'm okay with the vav saying va in certain circumstances, but also as a wa. But also we shouldn't expect English to map exactly onto Hebrew.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because for example, the ayin, with the guttural, or it's a like there, but there's more than one ayin, depending on the word.
So let's
olive,
pause.
Right. I mean,
let's pause real quick, because that's actually a really good a good example. So for Rushki Bear and others who have this question about the vav and like why it's sometimes wow, this is not the only letter within what my teacher Dr. Garrett called the classical pronunciation. In modern pronunciation, you don't pronounce ayin. But he would pronounce the ayin as a l sound, like way back in the throat, right? And that was throwing me off too. Like I was used to like what he would call a modern pronunciation, and I understand that you're seeing those as perhaps made up structures. But in his view, this is classical versus modern. But it was really actually screwing me up, because it's not just the vav to a wow. It's like a lot of so it sounds, the way that he pronounced his Hebrew was way different than what I was. Half the time I could hardly understand it. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, and so ideologically, you have a difference between Ashkenazi and Sephardi pronunciation in Israel today, because they pronounce Hebrew very differently. The accents sound different. The vowels sound different. Some of the consonants are very different. That's why you see like Shabbos, right?
Right.
How do they spell that in English? Like Shabbos, Shabbos. And the accent's on the first syllable, Shabbos. rather than a Sephardic would be Shabbat.
Shabbat,
right?
Yeah.
With the accent on the last syllable. But they're spelling it exactly the same in Hebrew, but they're pronouncing it differently. So, when people, and this isn't necessarily what Rushki Bear is getting into, but I've seen people take up this kind of little thing and then they run it up on like it's a flag to fight for, true pronunciation. And whenever you get into this is the true pronunciation from people who haven't really learned the language, that they're just using it as they're hijacking a concept that has a little bit of truth to it, variance in how a consonant is pronounced, but they're making too much out of it. They're protesting at something that is really not something to protest, but to learn about variance in language. And we come up with, different examples of that. I know that I had a video on my YouTube page, and Lou White, do you remember Lou White?
Of course.
Fossilized custom. Okay. He commented on one of my videos like 2 days ago. And it was something about how he pronounces God's name.
Right.
And then, so I asked him how to spell certain other names, and he's like, oh, well, we can't get into, he totally deflected and said, well, we need to treat each other nice. Anyway, but he's a guy who has totally ran this up the flagpole and rallied people around pronunciation, and he doesn't know Hebrew. But he's been doing this for 30 years or more, So that's frustrating to me, but
the thing that's frustrating, the thing that's frustrating to me about the Lou White aspect of things like this is that Lou White somehow got a reach that is just unbelievable. Anytime we're in, when we travel or when we go to conferences or whatnot, anytime someone uses certain pronunciations, we know exactly where they got it, whether or not they do or not. There's only,
right.
There's only, if you're saying Yahusha.
Yeah, it's made up. I call it Hebrewish.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using the word the name Yahusha for Yeshua, then you might not know it, but you got that from Lou White. It might have come through other sources, but whoever you got it from is getting it from Lou White, and it's ridiculous. Anyway, okay, let's move on. I want to address a question. Joshua in the chat room says, question, do you believe that penal substitutionary atonement, that is PSA, is a non-negotiable tier 1 doctrine? I do. Kind of a follow-up. If so, does that give more weight to the differences between us and those who would say that certain sins, eating pork, aren't paid by Christ? Just thinking out loud. So I haven't actually studied the arguments on penal substitutionary atonement. And because of that, I've always believed in penal substitutionary atonement just by default, because there was never anything else ever presented to me. And so I don't even understand how soteriology would work without such a doctrine. And so that's kind of a downfall for me, because I haven't looked into the arguments against it. However, I do believe in penal substitutionary atonement. I don't understand how soteriology would work without it, and I do think that once again, without knowing the other arguments against it, I just think that it has to be. There can't be, to me, there's not a world where that wouldn't be part of my soteriology. I just don't understand. So I think that at some point I will probably have to. Well,
they define redemption differently. It's very much it comes from the same group, in my estimation, that are going to advocate for a concept of free will, and that God just has a message for everybody, and you accept it and you're saved, kind of thing. It's not Yeshua actually accomplishing something and finishing something. So I think that is it. That is an important theological issue that I've talked to, I wouldn't say a ton of people, but people who hate I don't know why they hate the penal substitution idea.
I mean, we see courtroom imagery and we see courtroom language within the scriptures. I just don't understand why I just don't understand. So, once again, I suppose it'd probably do our audience and me well for me to go and sit down and watch some of the debates and understand the arguments. But I mean, full disclosure, I am just not at all up on the theological differences there. And so I don't know. I mean, I know what I believe, right? So,
yeah. Now I know this wasn't on our list today, but some are going to say, oh, well, where it says, Jesus died for my sins or because of my sins. Right? So saying he died for my sins is different than saying he died because of my sin.
Interesting. Yeah, Josh brings a follow-up there. He says, I think it stems from people wanting to rescue, quote unquote, rescue God from being so wrathful. Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look into it more. Okay, and in all honesty, my head is in a completely different place theologically right now. I've been doing like a ton of work on meals. I'm back into my focus of study, and it's been amazing. It's nice when you come home. Is this
like secretly just you love food? Is this the thing? Do you love all food, Caleb?
Can I tell you? Check this out. So I decided, and I for people who subscribe to Pronomian and support Pronomian, they already know this because I said this in my video yesterday. But I decided, man, I don't know what it would be like to have to throw out a sourdough starter every year. I'd be interested to know what that's like. So I created a sourdough starter. I've been making bread, right? And I'm getting it just locked in, and I do mean locked in, for next Passover when I throw away the starter and I make my bread without waiting. It takes a good 15 hours to make a good sourdough, and so I've been
that's
refining.
With a starter.
That's with a starter, right? Yep. Yeah. And so it'll be interesting next Passover when I throw away my starter. I don't have to wait anymore. I'm just making bread, and to see what that's like and to see how that works. And then to try to get a starter back. Anyway, so I started making bread, not because I'm like, ooh man, I need bread, but I can go to the store and get myself a great sourdough. But the whole process is what I'm trying to learn. However, I've started messing around with it. Yesterday, I made myself a honey sunflower seed sourdough. I gotta say, man, it was. I'm getting good. I'm getting good at it. And so yes, as we were cutting into the loaf, I was thinking to myself, I really did choose the right focus of study here. This is well worth. I'm spending my time well. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to our audio clip. Let's do it. So this was sent in to us. I don't know when. This is a long time ago. I'll let it speak for itself.
Hi guys, my name's Grant. I was hoping you could give a little insight or expand on this thought that I'm having. It's in relation to the sacrificial system and Christ's sacrifice. I've been having conversations with my family and friends about them, and they hold the belief that the sacrificial system was done away with at Christ's crucifixion or his resurrection. And I'm not so sure on that. I've pointed out things in the New Testament, like where the apostles are participating in the temple services. The author of Hebrews seems to indicate that the Levitical priesthood is still active. The Old Testament passages that talk about the millennium and the sacrifices seeming to return, which they are not happy when I bring those up. It just seems like an automatic pushback of like there's just no possibility that they could return because it would spit in the face of Christ. It would undo his.
I want to pause here. First of all, a couple of things need to be said. Number one, even within Torah observance, people use the term pronomian. A lot of people use the term one law, whatever you want to say. Our detractors usually just throw the label Hebrew roots on there, whatever you want to do. Even within the Torah movement at large, just put it under that huge umbrella, there are many people who do not believe there will be another temple and believe that the sacrificial system was done away with when Christ died and rose again, that was the final sacrifice and there should be no more. And I don't know if there's like footnotes on this somewhere where everybody's getting the same words, but every time I talk to a Christian on this and they think that the temple Christ's death and resurrection did away with the temple service, they use the same terminology. It would be spitting on the cross or spitting in the face of Christ for sacrifices to return. So it's always the same thing. Spitting on the cross or spitting in the face of Christ is the terminology that's used. I don't know if people like watch a video and that terminology is used or not. I don't know why it's always the same, but that's the terminology I always hear. And it should also be noted that like the term pronomian, Greg Bonson's the first one that I know of who used that term in the introduction to his book, By the Standard. And he says in that, like using that phrase, he actually references this belief. He says there are those who are pronomian, and that pronomian is a wide scale from those who believe that the law is a good thing and has great ideas in it, all the way to those who believe that the temple temple and sacrifices will be reinstated. I think, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, I think that the large amount of the idea that the sacrificial system is done away with Christ's death comes from a want to chop first of all, a need to get rid of the sacrificial system. Ultimately, like, how do we get rid of it? How do we say that the sacrificial system is done away with? We have to be able to say that because there's no temple and we can't sacrifice anymore. How do we get rid of it? Well, then they're going to, then the idea is, we break the Torah up into civil, ceremonial, and moral. Greg Bonson wanted to say that, and many Presbyterians today want to say that the civil aspects of the Torah are still in act. So they're bringing in moral and civil, whereas they're trying to get rid of ceremonial. Bonson was one of these, right? Bonson wants to get rid of the ceremonial aspects of the Torah, but he wants to retain the civil and moral aspects. So I think that mainstream Christianity, and even those who are in the Torah movement, when they say that they like the ceremonial aspects are done away with, I think that there's multiple things going on in that thought process, but ultimately this is heavily ingrained into Christianity. 2,000 years, right? 2,000 years is that it has told the Christian church, no, the ceremonial aspects, the sacrificial system is done away with. Now, our friend here, he hits on all of the main points. Paul, 20 years after he writes Galatians and Romans, goes to the temple to sacrifice. Why would he do that? If the sacrificial system is spitting on the cross of Christ, then why would Paul do that? He's already written Romans and Galatians. He must know, right? You have the Jerusalem Council telling Paul to go to the temple and sacrifice with other people. Why would they do that if the sacrificial system is spitting on the cross of Christ? And of course, our friend also brings up the notion of like Ezekiel's temple. Ezekiel 41 through 46, and the idea that there's this temple that's going to come back and there's going to be all these sacrifices made, including sin sacrifices, right? The prince makes sin sacrifices for the people, right? So, there's just a lot that could be said. I think that the weight of evidence clearly is in the idea that there would be another temple. However, people's mindset has been so ingrained with the idea that the sacrifices have been done away with, they have to brush all of that under the rug somehow. And so that their brain can't unwrap the notion that there might be sacrifices again. To them, it's like, well, no, Christ, they were all pointing to Christ, which I agree with. All sacrifices point to Christ. We're going to be on the same page there. All sacrifices point to Christ. I think that there might be an idea that this might be subtle, but I think that there might also be somewhat of an idea that sacrifices actually atone for sin in some way, shape, or form. And so if Christ now atones for sin in his sacrifice, we don't need those sacrifices anymore. That's kind of an idea that might be underlying there as well, even though it might be subconscious. Because the thing is that if they didn't do anything for sacrifice, then they were just a picture of what Christ would do. There's nothing wrong with a picture looking back. That's what pictures normally are, right? I have pictures on my phone right now of my children. Why? Because it captures a time and moment, a moment in time, rather. Anyway, let's listen to the end of his comment, because this is where his comment really takes shape and the real question comes in.
Spit in the face of Christ, it would undo his work. His work would have been pointless, and I don't see it that way. But my issue is, and my thought that I was hoping you could expand on, Christ's sacrifice is retroactive. It applies to all people in all time. If that's the case, then why would there be any sacrificial system at all? Wouldn't they be retroactively spitting in Christ's face? I don't understand how you can have both.
This is a fantastic point. Once again, if we're just saying that sacrifices are a picture, if they don't actually atone for, like, they don't actually help your sin, in other words, they don't deal with your sin problem, but they are just a picture of Christ dealing with your sin problem, and the idea that you need an innocent animal, an innocent life to pay for your sin, then there should be nothing wrong with seeing that picture in both directions. Right? So once again, this is why I said I think that there is a little bit of an underlying idea that sacrifice is paid for sin. And this is the question that I would try to get to with people who are arguing against the sacrificial system. Do you think that the sacrifices actually dealt with sin in any way, shape, or form? If the answer is yes, then okay, now I understand why you think that that it would be spitting on the cross of Christ to institute sacrifices again. If the answer is no, then what's the big deal? It should be a beautiful picture of what Christ did for us. Rob, go ahead. Sorry, I've been talking a long time.
Yeah, I think that I agree that if someone thinks, oh, if I lived BC, I would have had to do something different in order to get God's forgiveness. But now that I live AD, all
it's
else
different.
being the same, I don't have to do that other thing. And so they see it definitely as God had forgiveness of sins a certain way that ended.
Right.
And it ended, for once and for all. And now Christ is the once and for all. But another aspect of that, it seems to paint like all the people that are listed in Hebrews 11 as kind of, I don't want to say schmucks, but like, you know what I mean? Like,
close
like
it. Earmuffs, kids. Earmuffs.
Better. What?
Good gracious. I said earmuffs, kids, earmuffs. Don't let the kids hear that. Good gracious. This is a family show, Rob. Good gracious.
Is that a bad word? I don't even know what it means.
Yes. Oh. Anyway, yeah, it's okay.
Sorry.
Keep going. I am not going to explain that
I
one.
meant like now
I get what you mean.
Fools, or like they don't get it. Like ignorant, like they're ignorant. So yeah, that's. I think you went over all the things. He in the audio recording went over all the things. You went over all the things. And I mean, back to meals, since we were just talking about meals and looking at the Passover. Yeshua said, I have greatly desired to eat this Pesach with you. He's saying, I greatly desired to eat this lamb slaughtered under priestly auspices at the temple with you. And we know that, as was their custom growing up, his family went up every year to celebrate Pesach. What does that mean?
Right.
That means a lot of slaughter of animals for 7 days.
Right.
Right. And they kept the Feast of Tabernacles, which was a lot of slaughtering going on.
Yep.
So, and Yeshua never says, there are some scholars, I think it was Robert Eisenman. He wrote a book called, I think, James the Just. It's like this 1,000-page book. But he tries to argue that, like, James, brother of Jesus, was an Essene. He was a vegetarian.
Right.
He was. That Jesus too was against animal sacrifice, and he was a vegetarian.
Right. And
that it was cruel, like cruelty to animals, and that Jesus came to set all that right. to cease the cruelty to animals. So you have people even painting those types of pictures. And
So
the
the last thing I'd say, I apologize. Hang on.
Hi guys, my name's Grant.
Grant, I would just say this. I think that you're on the right track.
hang in there, bro.
Yeah, hang in there. Here's the thing is that this goes for everybody. You know, after we get over the cage stage of, you know, the Torah terrorist stage, I think that this is probably one of those things where it's like, hey, this is what I believe. And it really does affect my soteriology, and it even affects my, I mean, it could affect my, my view of soteriology in general. Right. And so it's important. However, this is one of those arguments. I brought this up at an ETS meeting one time. I raised my hand after somebody was done. I said, well, what about, you know, the fact that it seems as though the temple will be restored and that sacrifices will be reinstated. And the guy looked at me and he just said, I have never heard that view from any Christian before. I think you're in the minority and I don't think that's a problem. So, I mean, the point here is simply that I don't think you're going to win a bunch of people, you know, your family to Grant. I don't think you're going to win your family over on this one. I think that in love, you just say, okay, you know, I'm going to let this one lie. And you just let them, you know, and if they ask, sure, you know, we can talk about it. But this isn't necessarily something that I would be trying to fight for. You know, I think that it's kind of one of the, it's like a 12-step program. You have to come to the Sabbath first, then you come to the festivals, and then maybe you come to the kosher laws, and then maybe you're, you know, step by step, then circumcision, right? Then maybe, you know, so you're all these steps. The 12th step would be like, okay, let's look at eschatology and the reinstating of the temple, right? It's not something that I would necessarily bring up at the beginning. So hang in there, brother. Okay, if you've lasted this long, and we're going to cut it short today. I know that we're only at 46 minutes, but we're going to cut it short today. And the reason why is because we started so late, and we started so late because we had some technical issues. But Rob and I have to do an after show, and then we have other things we got to get done. However, if you've stayed with us this long, I'd like you to be praying about something for me. I've been kicking around the idea of doing some tours around the United States, and we've talked about possibly getting an RV. Now, I don't know if that's what the Lord wants us to do or not, but if you'd be praying about that, I would appreciate it. And if you got an RV laying around that's super nice and you just want to donate it, let us know. I mean, is that might sound weird, but hey, you know, you never can tell. Anyway, be praying about that for us. We got a lot of things going on, and we're really excited about it. And if you want to be a part of it, absolutely. TR Learning Center, that's going to be, you're going to find lots of stuff there, including a new lecture by Rob, hopefully up in the next day. chegg at TorahResource.com, CHEGG at TorahResource.com. You can also leave us a comment, 253-465-3205. It's 253-465-3205. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. I know it sounds weird, but it really does help us. All right, anything else to say before we go there, Rob?
Nope.
All right. Let's see here. All right. We'll be back next week. We hope that this conversation has done at least one thing. That is to glorify our great God and Savior, Yeshua the Messiah. Why? You know why. Because Messiah matters.